let's have a conversation, just you and me, so I can understand how you're setting the thing up there, so that we can come back and say, okay, how are we envisioning resilient, our resilient cities program or resilient communities program? Can we borrow some of this? And it may well be that we might actually have some of the similar kinds of things going on. When you say cohorts, help me out with that. What does that mean?
All right. It was the slide at the end that I didn't really show you guys as to how we were going to do stuff. There's 12. There's 6 themes of things that we have to figure out. They are interconnected, but if I can break it down, there's 6. And so the first theme is where we live, like where we spend the night.
Yeah.
So that can be houses, it can be accommodation, it can be retirement homes. So even hotels, right? The place where we spend the night. And that energy use is characteristic. It plays a particular role in the electricity and fuels area. It's built environment, so it either could be long-lived or it's not. So that profile like that. So where we sleep, and it makes a lot of difference what access people have to that place to sleep. And I've always been really struck when I go to places that our people would call undeveloped and poor, and the fact that there are no homeless people there. So the home is the first one, where we sleep. We have to have a secure place to sleep. We have to be able to wash ourselves. We have to be able to have a bit of comfort and sanitation, and and of what home means. All right, then the other one is where we go during the day. So again, buildings, built environment, schools, public buildings, commercial buildings. Again, there's a huge connection between those two that we've lost because of cars and streets and parking. Like to me, again, going to villages and other places, and the community buildings are so accessible, they're penetrable.
Okay.
And ours are surrounded by these awful dead zones called parking lots. It's just, there's something wrong about it. Yeah. So again, they're built environments. Right. And so again, our schools, so we have really an opportunity if we've done horrible things to correct those, because a lot of those horrible things, the longevity of those buildings is so bad that they're not there in 100 years. So you've got these 2 things, where we sleep and where we go, and between them is either human space or it's dead zone. Zombie space. So we've got that there's a lot there to reimagine and redo. And while we're redoing it, just to preserve our own humanity and reclaim our space, we get the chance to do a redo on the energy and the materials. So it's so important to get it right now in so many ways. And then there's 2 more sectors or themes. One is freight and flights. So the way that the economy moves. So you produce stuff, it has to get somewhere. You bring stuff in, it gets there somehow. And then the economic relationships, if you've got tourists or whatever it is you're doing, they a lot of times come in on flights. So looking objectively at, in Orkney, it's ferries. So for us, that whole sector is the coming and going from our place. So the ferries and the flights. And then there's the movements in our place. So that's the 4th one is both freight, goods distribution is called. So freight is when it's coming and going to our place and from our place.
And then the movement of the goods and services inside.
Yeah, and the movement of ourselves from where we sleep to where we go.
Okay.
So that personal transport, or goods movements. And in that one, in Orkney, we've got tourists moving around in there too. So we got to consider what they're doing. And then we got two more, and one of them is the things we make. So they make whiskey, they make cheese. So, you know, the processing, manufacturing, the things we make. And we really want to understand that ecosystem of the things we make, like how much of the things that we use are made somewhere else and brought in, and how much do we make, and how much do we make and ship out, because the tracking of that information is really not done. So on all of these things, we're actually starting with a way to accumulate the data, because we want to know. And what I really want to do is I want to tie the data of what moved to what value it had in moving. And then our final one, which sort of is an interesting one, is the land and sea, the waters and the land. So for an island like that, the coastal and the marine environment is really important. And there's a lot of agriculture there. So the land, the freshwater lakes and streams, and the sea. So what are we doing on the land? So the agriculture, the land that we're not using, that idea of the biocapacity, and the same for the sea. And of course, we're looking at, okay, what of that is degraded, what is regenerating, and what is essentially in its original condition, or, you know, we haven't actually degraded that yet. We haven't stripped it. And it's always a little bit disheartening how little of that there is. Yeah, we don't leave very much of it intact. And what can we learn from that? So in Orkney, there is a little patch of forest. And the archaeologists tell us that the place was actually forested. And that most of it was actually gone way before the British got there, which in Ireland and Scotland, the rest of Scotland, isn't true. The British in the 1800s did that, and they did it to New Zealand and Australia too. Just clear the bush, they call it. Get that stuff out of there. And now they're strip mining the oceans, of course, the trawling, bottom trawling, and that sort of thing. And then we supplant our own ecosystems in there, so that farming, the farmed fish and farmed animals and livestock and plants. And in that one, we're also putting our heritage, because that's you can see it right there, those giant standing stones, and the that's a use of the land that we choose to do to extract benefit from it. So the archaeology of uncovering these things and making them accessible to tourists, it's one of our land values, is the actual 5,000 years of history. And then our method is I am going to start a column in the newspapers and a probably fortnightly, every 2 weeks, radio spot on BBC Orkney and maybe the other islands. We'll see how it goes. I've got the guy in Orkney, and it's so important that this stuff we're doing be transparent, and that anybody can ask a question or provide or give us a good idea. You know, I'm going to be real honest that you know, we've got the scientific foundation, but we're explorers here. You know, picture it like Lewis and Clark. There's probably indigenous people who know what we should do, but we're just trying to find our way. We're just exploring, and it's critical that we do, because we have to find the ways and lead the rest of the people through. And so we're looking for people who want to participate in that, be part of the cohort, and they're gonna people can come and go, but there's going to be a set of workshops that we kind of informed. So and we've got research to do still, like if we're going to start collecting data and information that we can use to understand our transition, like where are we at, and if we and to do modeling, okay, if we change this, then what would happen?
Well, what happens if we change that? Yeah.
How do you get that data? You know, we can get receipts, tax data, sort of. There's just we're awash in data, and yet we have a drought of data. So I have some ideas, and I've run it past our academics who are experts in data science, and they think it'll work. So we're going to essentially use Google, like this thing that Google did, where they used the geospatial locations as the framework for all the data. Now you can create layers in that space with the kind of data that you want, and you can drill down, you can connect up layers. Computers can handle that because they don't try to do it all at once. You give them a few pieces of information, and then they can chase that down into another giant database. They don't have to try and search a whole, the whole universe in one go.
Right.
So yeah, we've used it before, and that's why I'm pretty sure. And Google is open source. You can use that geospatial system, and I've had a lot of students learn how to do it, and so it's not a thing that only a few people can do, and it's something that people can curate their own data. So you know where your house is in Google Map, and you know where you go to work. So if you connect those two and you put that into the work trip layer, then we can get information about the work trip travel that people on the island are doing. We go through the end time methodology. Basically, we once we form a cohort of people who want to go through that, and there's some other people who have been working on transition for a long time, not really engineers, but social scientists and that. Mm-hmm. And I was just in a workshop in New Zealand with one from Netherlands, and he's adamant that there's no use trying to bring along people who aren't actually committed to transition. You should only work with the already converted. And I get it if you've been working for a long time, that you might feel like you're banging your head against the wall, but it's what you're asking them to do that's precluding all these other people. If you don't make assumptions and you don't think that you're preaching to them, you're, again, like these expeditions. We're going on an expedition, and we're going to observe. We're going to make sure we get good data and good numbers, and we're going to use real modeling. But we're going to explore, and then we use a thing I call gamification. So when we have to make choices, if they're choices we haven't had to make before, then we have to play them. So like with chess, where you don't make each move without thinking forward where that leads.
Forward, what happens? Yeah.
Yeah. So we can provide some of that forward looking for a given move. I don't like scenarios at all. I think they're a massive waste of time. I've been studying them for years and getting so annoyed that people seem to be able to get away with just making shit up. I mean, it was a long time ago, I actually tried to publish a paper where I did a survey of all these things that everywhere where somebody said they were doing a scenario. And I did a big review, and I said, look, none of these actually have a methodology. There's no standard methodology for creating scenarios. And yet this is what people are using to inform policy and investment. And it's hocus pocus. And then if you look back, you can see how completely inaccurate they are. And what's weird is that if they were actually random, then there should be some amount of time that they're relatively close. Like if you guess at answers on a test, there's a statistical number that you'll actually get right. But with scenarios, whatever people are doing with them, it's almost like the worst advice you could possibly give. They're never right. They're always wrong. And man, I could not get that published anywhere, I tell you. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to publish it in places where people were publishing scenarios.